My family owns approximately 85 acres directly next to Terry Nichols in the Thumb of Michigan, right down the street from Tim McVeigh on the corner of Argyle and Germania in Sanilac County, MI. Our property is currently listed for sale if anyone is interested. This happened when I was 12 years old, if I had to guess, but I am not 100% sure. I was born in 1983, so it would have been around 1994. I never used to go hunting with my dad, and typically only would go to the property in the summer to swim in the pond and play with my cousins for a weekend. However, this hunting season, there was extremely bad snow, and my mom suggested I go with my dad so he wouldn't be alone. I don't recall if I was upset or not about having to go, but I'm sure it was. I hate hunting and would never have the commitment to sit in a tree for hours. I lived in Metro Detroit of 21 Mile RD at the time, so it was a good hour and 20-minute drive to our property. By the time we arrived, the sun was almost set, and my dad rushed in to get his hunting gear on and headed straight out to the woods. I should mention that up until this point, my dad had already known Terry Nichols for quite a few years and wasn't a big fan. At first, he asked if he could hunt our land, as his was all open field, and we are really the only woods around for the deer to shelter in. This soon came to an end after several incidences of him screaming at his son at 5 a.m., scaring away all the deer, or so I've been told by my dad. Anyways, as I was sitting in our cabin trailer, I started hearing branches breaking outside the window, and minutes after that, a figure passed the window in the back bedroom. I immediately grabbed my dad's keys on, jumped in his truck, started it, and locked the doors. I don't know why I felt more safe in the truck, but I think it's because it was pointing towards the woods, and I would be able to see the minute my dad was done hunting. I don't know how long I sat in the truck for, but after a while, a figure walked out of the woods. I immediately jumped out to run to my dad and tell him about what I saw. As I got closer to the figure, I could hear the snow crunching as it walked, and we got about 20 feet apart when the figure stopped and froze in its tracks. I called out and said, "Dad," in a whisper, because you always whisper when hunting. No response. I don't remember if it was a full moon that night or if it was the snow creating a reflection, but I was able to make out that it was a man and he was holding something. My first thought is that it was my dad and that he may have heard a deer, so he was listening for it. So we both stood staring at each other in silence for a good minute or two, and the figure turned around and walked back across the bridge, crossing our river behind the cabin. I ran back to the truck and waited again for a friganes. I don't know how long. Soon after, another figure came out of the woods, and I turned on the headlights and was relieved to see my dad and his gun. I jumped out and started asking him why he would do that. He was oblivious to what I was saying and told me that he was in the back tree blind and never got out the whole night. The next morning, when we woke up, we traced the tracks across the bridge and into the woods, heading towards Terry's house. To this day, I don't know for sure who the figure was, but I am 99% sure it was Terry Nichols, and he was poaching my land. About a year later, he was caught, and the FBI did a sweep of our property just to be sure he didn't stash anything we didn't know about. The last I saw Terry, he chased me down on a three-wheeler and ran me and my friend across the road for cutting across his field. Cops were called, but they didn't do anything about it. He was jailed roughly a year later and eventually gassed. Today, we are surrounded by one family that bought his house, I believe, from auction.